Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're strapping in for what is arguably the most critical and probably the most stressful few minutes of any flight.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And definitely the most rewarding when you get it right.
Yeah, exactly. We've got a pretty massive stack of manuals on the desk today. The Airplane Flying Handbook, of course, some very specific FAA guidance like the SA077 on stabilized approaches.
Which is incredibly detailed.
Right. And we also have some practical breakdowns from Flight Training Central and a few dense aerodynamic documents that kind of mathematically prove why we do what we do.
And honestly, some of those documents can look really intimidating. I mean, they don't just tell you what to do, they give you the raw physics of why you absolutely have to do it.
Yeah, they're heavy reading for sure. But we're digging into all this today because of a statistic that just hits you right between the eyes. It says that the landing phase accounts for more pilot-caused aircraft accidents than literally any other single phase of flight.
Yeah, it's the statistic that keeps flight instructors up at night. And if you really think about it, it makes total sense.
You're taking a metal tube designed to move fast.
Right, you're hurling it through the air and then trying to gently park it on a strip of pavement that isn't moving at all. Usually while you're battling wind and turbulence in your own nerves.
It kind of feels like it should be the easy part, right? You're just coming down. But all the sources we have today argue that the reason it goes wrong is because we completely misunderstand the physics.
We really do. We treat landing like a single event, like a button you press.
I'm landing now.
Exactly. When in reality, it's actually a very complex transition of energy states.
And that's the core insight we need to start with, I think. It is an energy transition. You're managing potential energy, which is your altitude and kinetic energy, your airspeed.
And you have to dissipate both of those at an
So our mission today for this deep dive is to take that scary concept of landing and totally deconstruct it. We're going to break down the stable approach, which everyone talks about but maybe doesn't fully grasp.
We'll dissect the physics of the flare, too.
Right. And we're going to look at what these safety documents call the deadly lie of safe airspeed.
Which is fascinating. And we should probably clarify right now who this is for. We aren't lecturing to aeronautical engineering PhDs here.
No, definitely not.
We want to frame this for you, the learner. Imagine you're a student pilot, maybe high school age. You're sitting in the left seat of a Cessna for the first time, trying to master the art of arrival without utterly terrifying your instructor.
That is the perfect mindset. So let's start with the gold standard. You hear this term constantly in flight training. Are you stable? Stay stable. But without a strict definition, that's just noise. What does a stable approach actually look like?
Well, it's not just a feeling you get. The FAA guidance, specifically that SA077 document, gives us a very rigid definition. A stable approach is not just pointing the nose at the runway.
No, it's about meeting specific parameters, right?
Exactly. 5 specific parameters.
Yeah.
Think of it like a checklist that you have to satisfy continuously, every single second until the wheels actually touch the pavement.
Okay, let's unpack that checklist for everyone. What is number 1?
Glide path. You need a constant angle of descent. Typically, this is 3 degrees to the touchdown zone.
And why does that exact angle matter so much?
Because if you're diving and then leveling off and then diving again, your airspeed is going to fluctuate wildly. You're trading energy back and forth super inefficiently. You really need a straight, smooth line to the runway.
Right. No roller coasters on final approach. And number 2 on that list is heading.
Correct. You are tracking the runway center line. And this is a key point here, with only minor corrections.
Minor being the operative word.
Right. If you are banking 20 degrees to the left and then 20 degrees to the right just to stay aligned, you aren't stable. You're scrambling.
Okay, number 3 is the big one. This is the one I think causes the absolute most confusion for student pilots. Airspeed.
The magic number. The Airplane Flying Handbook is very clear on this. You want the manufacturer's recommended approach speed. But if that isn't published, for some reason, there's a golden rule of thumb. 1.3 VSO.
1.3 VSO. Let's decode that acronym.
VSO is your stalling speed in the landing configuration.
Meaning the plane is fully dirty.
Exactly. Gear is down, flaps are fully extended. You take that stall speed, multiply it by 1.3, and that is your exact target speed.
But why 1.3? Why not 1.5 just to have a safety margin? Or 1.1 so you can land shorter?
That goes right back to the energy balance we talked about. If you fly at 1.5, you have way too much kinetic energy. You are going to float down the entire runway and probably never land.
And if you fly 1.1,
you're teetering on the edge of stall. A sudden gust of wind or just a moment of distraction, and the wing completely stops flying.
Yeah.
So 1.3 provides a 30% buffer above the stall. It's enough to safely maneuver, but low enough that you can actually stop within the runway distance.
And the tolerance on that speed is incredibly tight. The standard is plus 10 knots or minus 5 knots. That's your entire window.
It is. If you were 15 knots fast, you might sit there thinking, oh, extra speed is safety. It isn't. You are just setting yourself up for a totally different kind of accident, usually running right off the far end of the runway.
All right, so we have glide path heading and airspeed. What's number 4?
Configuration. This just means your flaps are set correctly for the landing, your gear is down. And please, for the love of aviation, double-check the gear and your trim is set. You shouldn't be physically fighting the yoke to keep the nose where you want it.
And the final one, number 5.
Descent rate. It needs to be steady. Generally between 500 and 1,000 feet per minute. If you are dropping like a rock at 1,500 feet per minute, you're setting yourself up for a really hard arrival.
So we have these 5 items. Glide path heading, airspeed configuration, descent rate. It sounds great on paper, but we all know in the cockpit things get messy fast. Which brings us to a concept I really want to emphasize. The gate.
The gate is easily one of the most important safety concepts in modern aviation. It is a specific, predetermined altitude where if you are not completely stable, meaning you don't meet every single one of those 5 parameters, you must abandon the approach.
You don't try to fix it at all.
You do not try to fix it.
Yeah.
For instrument flight, that gate is usually 1,000 feet above the ground. For visual flight, which is what most student pilots are doing, it's 500 feet.
So picture this. You are coming in, you're at 400 feet, but your airspeed is 20 knots too fast.
You go around immediately.
What if you're at 400 feet and you realize you forgot the flaps, so you just reach down and quickly dump them in?
You go around, and the aerodynamics documents explain exactly why. If you fly a steep, low-power approach, where you're basically diving at the runway and hoping for a last-minute save modern aircraft, require considerable maneuver to actually flare.
Meaning you literally might not have the elevator authority to stop the plane from hitting the ground hard.
Exactly. The gate removes all the emotional guesswork. Are you stable by 500 feet? Yes.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah.
No. Power up and go around. It's a binary choice. Physics does not care about your optimism.
That's a great way to put it. Okay, let's assume we made the gate. We're perfectly stable. We're crossing the threshold. Now comes the part that terrifies basically every new pilot, the flare.
Or as the Airplane Flying Handbook officially calls it, the roundout.
Right, the roundout. This is where the physics get really beautiful, but also really unforgiving.
The handbook describes the roundout as a slow, smooth transition from a descent attitude to a landing attitude. You're essentially trying to fly parallel to the runway just a few inches above the pavement while bleeding off energy.
Some of the technical sources call this a transient condition. I love that term. It sounds very scientific, but it just means trying not to drop out of the sky.
It's a highly accurate term, though. You are actively trading one form of energy for another. You're trading airspeed for a reduced sink rate. You pull back on the yoke, increasing your angle of attack to create a bit more lift and stop the descent. But doing that simultaneously increases drag, which slows you down.
And this is exactly where we run into that deadly lie we teased earlier. As pilots, we obsess over airspeed. We stare at the dial, 65 knots, 60 knots, 55 knots. But relying solely on airspeed during the flare is a trap.
It's a massive trap because of one fundamental aerodynamic truth. An airplane can stall at any speed.
Let's pause right there to make sure everyone catches that. Any speed.
Literally any speed. If you pull back abruptly on the controls, you can exceed the critical angle of attack, even if the airspeed indicator shows you are well above the polar stall speed.
Because the wing doesn't care how fast it's moving through the air.
Exactly. It only cares about the angle at which the air is hitting it.
Critical angle of attack. That is the only actual constant.
Correct. It does not change with weight. It doesn't change with your bank angle. It doesn't change with density altitude.
But airspeed does change with those things.
Right. Airspeed is just a proxy. If the plane is heavy, your stall speed is higher. If you're in a speed bank, your stall speed is higher. But the critical angle of attack where the wing stops flying is always exactly the same.
And there's another trap here, the region of reversed command. What does that mean for our high school student pilot?
It's totally counterintuitive. In normal cruise flight, to go slower, you just reduce power. But in a landing configuration at very low speeds, your drag increases dramatically. Specifically induced drag from the wings creating lift.
So to maintain your altitude while going slower, you actually need more power, not less.
That is the trap. You get low and slow, You pull back on the yoke to stay in the air. Drag massively increases, so you sink faster. Your brain says pull back more.
And you stall.
Then you drop out of the sky. That is the classic accident on a botched flare. You're asking the wing for lift it physically cannot give you.
Speaking of physics, there was a great analogy in the research about friction versus aerodynamic drag once you're actually near the ground. It felt like high school physics class all over again.
I love this part of the theory. It perfectly explains why you can't just slam the brakes on immediately if you land too fast.
Right. Break that down for us.
Think about it. When you touch down fast, say 70 or 80 knots, you have almost no weight on the wheels because the wings are still moving fast enough to generate lift. So your mechanical brakes are basically useless.
Because there's no friction. It's like a car skidding on black ice.
Exactly. But your aerodynamic drag is huge because drag increases with the square of your speed. So at high speed, the air itself is what slows you down. But as you slow to about 60 or 70% of your touchdown speed, that aerodynamic drag practically vanishes.
And that is exactly when you need the mechanical brakes to take over.
Right? It's a handover. You need the air to slow you down initially, and then you need the weight to actually settle onto the wheels so the brakes can grip the pavement. If you touch down too fast, you're stuck in this dangerous limbo where the brakes don't work yet because there's no weight on them, but you are eating up thousands of feet of runway.
Which brings us perfectly to the oops moments, the common errors. Flight Training Central has a great breakdown of this, and honestly, reading their list felt like I was reliving my first few flight lessons.
It's a rite of passage for every pilot, but understanding the actual mechanics of the error is the only way you fix it.
Let's start with the classic, ballooning. I feel like absolutely everyone does this early on. You're coming in, the ground is rushing up at your face, you panic, and you just yank back on the yoke.
And the plane shoots right back up into the air.
Why is that so incredibly dangerous? I mean, you're going up away from the ground. Isn't that safer?
No, because you have already cut the engine power to idle. So you are trading your very last bit of airspeed for altitude. You are climbing, but you are rapidly decelerating. Now you find yourself 20 feet in the air with zero airspeed approaching a stall.
And when the wing quits flying from 20 feet up, you drop like a stone.
Hard. It breaks landing gear.
So what's the actual fix for ballooning?
If it is a minor balloon, you just hold the pitch steady, don't push the nose down, but stop pulling back. Just let the speed bleed off and the plane will settle naturally. But, and this is vital, if it is a major balloon, if you really shot up there,
You go around.
you add full power and go around. Do not try to save a landing from 20 feet up with no airspeed. You just don't have the energy left to cushion the fall.
Okay, error number 2 on the Flight Training Central list. Bouncing. You hit the runway hard and you pop back into the air.
The Airplane Flying Handbook makes a really funny but accurate clarification here. The airplane isn't a rubber ball. It doesn't bounce because the tires are elastic.
It bounces entirely because of aerodynamics, right?
Yes, you hit hard. The inertia physically forces the tail of the airplane down, which abruptly increases your angle of attack. The wing suddenly generates a massive spike of lift, and the plane just flies again.
So you're back in the air, totally surprised, and usually very slow.
If it's a tiny skip, a minor bounce, you can reflare. Maybe add a tiny squeeze of power to cushion the next touchdown. But if it is a severe high bounce,
I think I know the answer by now.
go around. And here is the most critical warning of all. Do not force the nose down to try and stick the landing. If you bounce and shove the yoke forward, you risk porpoising.
Porpoising. That's error number 3. This is the one that destroys firewalls and collapses nose gears.
It is violent. You hit nose wheel first, the plane bounces back up. You aggressively push down to fix it. You hit nose first again, even harder. It's a terrible oscillation that gets worse with every single hit.
The FAA guidance is incredibly strict on this one.
There is only one solution to a porpoise. Immediate go-around. You cannot salvage a porpoise. You have to get the weight off the wheels and stabilize the aircraft back in the air.
And finally, error number 4, floating. This goes right back to our stable approach discussion, doesn't it?
Almost always, yes. Floating happens because you came in over the numbers too fast. You're carrying that extra 5 or 10 knots for the wife and kids, as the old joke goes.
But the runway is rapidly running out.
And the plane simply refuses to land because the wings still have too much lift. The absolute danger here is running off the far end of the pavement or getting impatient and forcing the nose down, which causes a porpoise.
So if you are floating halfway down the runway, you just have to accept that the approach is bad and go around.
I think we're sensing a theme here.
Yeah, a go around really seems to be the universal solvent for almost all landing problems.
It really is. A go-around is a perfectly valid, safe maneuver. It is not a failure. A crash is a failure. Executing a go-around shows excellent pilot judgment.
Let's shift gears a bit to technology. We talked about how airspeed can be a deadly lie. Well, the safety bulletins and the handbooks talk about a modern tool that lets us see the invisible, the angle of attack indicator.
These are becoming so much more common in general aviation cockpits, and for very good reason. Remember we said the critical angle of attack is the only true constant.
Right.
An AOA indicator actually measures the pressure differential on the wing and gives you a direct visual readout of exactly how close you are to the stall. It cuts through all the confusing variables.
It accounts for the G loading in a tight turn. It accounts for your flap setting.
Exactly. It just tells you plainly you have 20% lift margin left.
It's essentially like having a fuel gauge, but for your lift.
That's a perfect analogy.
Uh-huh.
It helps the student instantly see the true energy state of the wing. Instead of trying to calculate 1.3 VSO in your head while battling a gusty crosswind, you just glance at the AOA gauge. If it's green, you're good. If it's yellow or red, you are unsafe.
The sources also talk heavily about the role of simulation. And we aren't just talking about playing a video game at home. Things like the SIA sim or official flight simulation training devices.
The immense value of a sim for landing practice is that you can mess up without any real-world consequence.
Right, you can't bend the metal in a sim.
Exactly. You can practice that exact recovery from a bad bounce or a massive balloon 50 times in 1 hour. You build the muscle memory for the sight picture, knowing exactly what the runway should look like when you flare at the proper height, without paying for aviation fuel or risking a prop strike.
It allows you to literally freeze the world midair and say, okay, look at this picture right now. This is too high.
It accelerates the learning curve so significantly.
Yeah.
It builds those neural pathways so that when the real bounce inevitably happens, your hands know exactly what to do before your conscious brain even has time to panic.
So bringing this all together, we have looked at the terrifying stats, the actual physics and the common errors. If you were that student pilot listening to this right now, what are the ultimate takeaways?
First, respect the parameters. A stable approach is not optional. Nail your airspeed, nail your glide path. If you aren't perfectly stable by the 500-foot gate go-around, respect the angle of attack.
Yeah.
Airspeed is a useful tool, but the wing's angle relative to the wind is the physical reality. If you have an AOA indicator in your plane, use it. If not, make sure you understand the concept deeply.
And then third.
Accept the go-around. I cannot stress this enough to new pilots. If you bounce, if you float, if you balloon smoothly, add full power pitch, clean up the airplane and try again. The runway will still be there.
I want to leave our listeners with a pro tip I found buried in the Airplane Flying Handbook. It's about exactly where you should be looking.
The aiming point versus the touchdown point.
Right. The handbook clarifies that where you point the nose of the plane, the aiming point is definitively not where the wheels are going to hit.
Because of the geometry of the flare. If you aim your nose directly at the runway numbers, you're going to land well past the numbers. You fly your glide path down to the aiming point, but then you level off, and you naturally float past it to the actual touchdown point.
Knowing that difference prevents you from trying to force the plane down too early or accidentally floating way too long.
It's just geometry, not magic.
It really is. So here is our final thought for you to chew on today. We opened the show with the harsh fact that the landing phase causes the most pilot-caused accidents. And we know now that it's fundamentally an energy management problem.
Right.
So why, in traditional flight training, do we spend so much time staring at an airspeed indicator inside the cockpit rather than learning to actually feel the energy state of the airplane?
That is the big question.
Yeah.
We stare at a needle that constantly lags and sometimes lies, instead of looking outside and letting our hands and body feel the energy of the wing.
Next time you go up, ask your instructor to show you, at a safe altitude of course, what a truly stable approach feels like versus an unstable one. Close your eyes for a second if they let you. Feel the sink rate in your seat. Feel the drag on the airframe.
Learn to fly the wing, not the gauge.
Fly safe, everyone.
And keep learning.